So some questions from our audience here. Maxwell would like to know, and I asked a variation on this earlier, how do you keep moving at such a crazy rate?
What, you mean physically or mentally or everything? Everything. Oh my God. Surgery. Yeah, and I'm not even kidding. I've had a series of things wear out, and they've been replaced. You know,
Cyborg.
yeah, no, not so much a cyborg, but no. I mean, after I got done with the whole throat cancer thing, which was like, you know, me being heavily irradiated, you know. So I'm thinking, well, that must be good for something. Must be. I mean, if it works for Marvel, you know, maybe I could be mutated and something, you know. Yeah, did all that, got rid of that. That was not something I'd recommend, but yeah, make the best of it. And then I'm thinking, hey, this is really cool, bum 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 bum, and I'm doing sport, fencing training. I'm running around, blah, 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 and my Achilles goes, boom! So my right Achilles snapped completely, like in half. I'm sitting on the floor looking at my foot, which is now not connected to my leg. I'm like, oh, that's weird, look at that, you know. And it didn't hurt, that's the weird thing. Because as I discovered, you know, it hurts because if it was connected, it would hurt. But once it's disconnected, like you pull the plug out of the socket, there ain't no electricity going in there, dude.
It's a phantom limb.
Yeah, and so anyway, 36 hours later, that got stitched back together in France, and I'm in a boot and on crutches for like a month. But this was 4 months before an Iron Maiden tour, right? So I'm literally on a crash course for getting rehab done on it, and the guy did as good a job as he could do. But there's no way you're going to rehab a complete break of your Achilles in 4 months. So for the Book of Souls tour, I couldn't actually walk or run. So I had to devise a way, and nobody figured it out. Everyone was like, oh my God, look at he's so athletic on stage. Look at the way he moves, you know. I was just like, no. So what I did was I devised a way of moving around on stage that did not involve using my calf muscles, right?
Go on.
Well, I shall demonstrate. Right? So basically, you know, if you're using your calf muscle, you can run around like that, right? You know, but I couldn't do that because I would just be doing this, you know. So what I did was I did like that, and like that, and like that, and over there, like that. And people went, oh my God, look at him, he's so sporty and athletic. How does he do that? I said, no, it's because my fucking calf doesn't work anymore, and I have to work like that, you know. But it's sort of it's a horrible injury, and as I said, it doesn't hurt. When it broke, it didn't hurt. When they reconnected it, it hurt like hell, you know. But so that was that. And then a year later, my hip started playing up, and I was like, I was, you know, and I went to see the hip doc, and he goes, yeah, you need another one. I went, what? You know. So I had the hip replaced, you know. So they, you know, boom, and that was great. It worked really well. And 2 years later. The other one went, which is what somebody told me happens. They said, yeah, when you get one done, a couple of years later, the other one will go. So I thoroughly recommend it. You know, I mean, it's you know, if you, you know, it's a hell of a lot easier than breaking your Achilles. Let me tell you that. I mean, I was the second one. I was so worried. I was on tour with Maiden, and I couldn't walk upstairs, you know, and went to the hip doc in New York. This was in like a couple of years ago in October, and said, help, and he goes, yeah, you need another one. I went, no. He said, yeah. I said, but the last one was 6 months of rehabilitation. He goes, no, not the way I do it. I went, oh, you know. So he actually gave me a shot in the hip, which fixed everything for 3 months. And it actually worked really well. Some people it doesn't, but in my case, it did. So I got through the tour, and I was like, do I really need a new hip? Everything's just great, you know. Then it started to wear off, and then he can't operate for 3 months, so then he has to wait till that's done. But in February, I was in New York. I walked out of surgery an hour after surgery. I woke up, and then an hour later, I walked 300 yards to a coffee shop. I had a cup of coffee, got in a cab, went back to the hotel, was walking every day. And the following Friday, I flew to LA, I was working in the studio. And 6 weeks after the operation, I was back in the gym just like nothing had happened. I could not believe how it had evolved in that way. So yeah, and so now whatever if you ask me how am I running around, that's the answer. It's titanium and ceramic bits, you know.
Well, we're all very thankful to each of those doctors, and I have to say, sitting here across from you, you look fantastic.
Do I?
You do.
Really?
You do indeed, right?
Oh, I say. You're not my type, though. You know.
So here's a great segue. Ties into the Achilles story. Which fencing weapon do you like the most? And this does not tie into the last question. Have you tried every sword?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's 3 weapons that you can potentially fence as a sport fencing weapon. One is the saber, which is an edged weapon that you can cut with the edge. The other 2 are, you can only score with a point. The épée looks like kind of a dueling sword, more like a rapier, and the target for that is the entire body, top to toe. It's the easiest weapon to understand because apart from rules like, you know, no kicking, no gouging, no scratching, no punching, anything goes. So it's scored electrically. So if you hit any part of the other person, you score, right? If you both hit each other at the same time, you both score. So from that perspective, it's quite easy to understand conceptually. The foil is a little bit more complicated because it has some rules about what counts and what doesn't count in terms of scoring, which I won't go into now. But I started off as a foilist. Foil tends to be quite aggressive. It's very advantageous to take to be offensive, and I like being offensive, as you know. So it's very advantageous to do that. Probably 60 or 70% of the time, it's the attacker that is going to get the point. Épée is the reverse. Épée is sneaky, underhand, low, and cunning, and the guy may be attacking you to provoke your reaction, and then you make an unwise reaction. Oh, so it's a counter-punching weapon, more. So I was a foilist. I was on the Olympic squad in '88. I didn't make the team, but I was on the training with the squad. And the best I ever got was like number 7 in the UK, which wasn't bad considering I was in Iron Maiden and everything at the time. You know, it was hard to train. So then after that, after like in the 90s when children arrived and all the rest of it, I just fenced for fun. And then my coach died, sadly. I'd been with him for 15, 20 years. And I thought, oh, do I really want to continue with, I don't want a new coach. I'm like in my late 40s. Come on, you know, I'm fencing a weapon that, you know, there's these 16-year-old kids who are on, you know, hyped up going, like that, you know, like Sonic the Hedgehog, you know, with a weapon, you know. Really, and there's this old guy turns up and going toe-to-toe with them, you know. So I thought maybe I'll take up épée, which is the rapier one, you know, because basically, psychologically, in épée, you need to be patient and smart. If you're tall, it helps. And I thought, well, I'm short, impatient, and not so smart. So maybe I'll learn something. So I I just dropped one weapon and started fencing épée. So now I fence épée, but I also went back to foil, and I made the foil team with my new hip, veterans European team. We got a silver at the European Vets Championships a couple of years ago. And this year, I've been trying to make the World Championship team in the UK. The World Championships are in Bahrain in October. And I think they take 4 or 5, the top 4 or 5. And at the moment in épée, I'm number 4. So in theory, I'd be selected. However, I can't go because I'm playing the Wilton Theatre on that date. So what do you know? You know,
it was amazing how you landed the plane there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that Wiltern show that's the last show of the solo tour.
That is the last show. So the first one's in Anaheim, House of Blues, and then Vegas, House of Blues. And then we head off to Phoenix, Albuquerque, Houston, Dallas, Rocklahoma, the festival. So we're headlining a stage at Rocklahoma. Then by personal request, we're doing New Orleans. Only because
personal request of yours.
Yeah, because I really want to go to New Orleans. I've only been once with Maiden, and I said I want to do New Orleans, and they said, there's nobody in New Orleans like rock music. I'm like, that's got to be bullshit, you know. So we do the House of Blues in New Orleans, and Fort Lauderdale. Then we go to Brazil, and we do the show in Brazil, and then we come back to New York, and then we resume. New York, Boston, and then I get a little bit out of sync with my diary, but Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. We'd nip up to Canada for Montreal, Toronto, and then Chicago, Detroit, Chicago, and Louisville, Louder Than Life. And I think, we do one in DC as well. And then we head off over Minneapolis, Denver, Sacramento, Aftershock, and then Wilton Theatre. So that's almost in the right order.
Lovely. And you got those 2 DWP festivals in there too. That's a lot to remember.
Yeah.
So this question, what do you think of the 1981 horror film The Incubus that features a performance of you and Samson playing in a movie theater?
Yeah,
That's from Greg Z. No relation to Roy, I presume.
Features a heavily caffeinated version of me as well. Look at my eyeballs, like that, right? No, I had no idea that was going to be used in Incubus, right? So the first thing I knew about that was when somebody said, "Wow, it's you in Incubus." I went, "What?" You know, and sure enough, I saw that. It was from a. We did a video called Biceps of Steel with Samson, which was, oh my God, what's the name of the guy? Director, who's now, he's quite a posh Hollywood type name now, Julian Temple, right? Sure. Right, Julian Temple. Julian Temple's first video, I believe, was me. Samson, Biceps of Steel.
Love it. Featuring
a 15-minute short, right, that was supposed to go out with, I'm sure if you asked him, do you remember Biceps of Steel? He goes, no, it wasn't me, my brother. No. But it featured this cheesy story about Samson, super roadie, who is so into like protecting the kids against the brutish security people, but they use the girl on the ticket desk to seduce him, cut his hair, and he loses his powers, but finally he pulls apart 2 giant Marshall stacks, and the entire theatre collapses and everybody dies. There you go, little, you know. So we filmed this, and we did one track called Hard Times, and then another one called Vice Versa. Vice Versa was the one which featured with the in Incubus, and they just extracted, and that was it was just we did it in the Rainbow Theatre, which was still a theatre back then. Now I think it's like it's a church. now, or for some, sect or something. But back in the day, it was an actual venue. In fact, it was the first London venue I played with Iron Maiden, was the Rainbow. So yeah, and we shot it at the Rainbow, and our drummer Barry, or Thunderstick. Thunderstick was Samson, Super Roadie, wearing a big red wig, and his brother-in-law was playing him in the cage with like the gimp mask on. The gimp mask was rather an unfortunate touch because at the time we became notorious, because whilst he was wearing the gimp mask, he had prepared that persona of Thunderstick. The idea was that it was going to be a cross between the Residents and Gene Simmons. So whilst he was in character, he would utter no human sound. So interviews were dodgy, So like, well, Mr. Stick, what do you think about that? He was like the Frankenstein voice, from like Son of Frankenstein, smoke good, So he would stay in character, doing all this stuff, but obviously got his brother-in-law to double. We made the movie, and then that bit that I'm in is actually just it's just a laser shining. It's like a green laser shining through smoke over the stalls in the auditorium, and I am sat in one of the seats, and I just sort of go, Bob, there's a laser, pop, like that. So she was a real two-timer. She knew I'd never leave. Finest hour. Julian Temple, bless him.
I love the Julian Temple part of that story too, because there's a lot of it. Makes me think of the director Jonas Åkerlund, who
I know Jonas.
Yeah, and he's done huge videos for Lady Gaga,
Yeah,
and Madonna, and all these.
Yeah,
his first video ever was Candlemass.
Yeah, yeah, but that's because he loves that shit.
Yeah.
Julian Temple hated this shit. No, it was like, oh my God, do I have to work with these people, these horrible people?
Big difference.
Haven't washed.
Well, speaking of Incubus, you are a bit of a cinephile in addition to all of your other tastes and pursuits. And you mentioned 3:10 to Yuma, and I know there's a lot of great westerns and things that you love. Bruce Dickinson, the solo artist, in some ways owes a debt to Freddy Krueger.
Oh, yeah. I've never seen okay, so I have to plead ignorance on this one. I'll take the fifth.
Which it was Elm Street the fifth. So.
Yeah. And so my publishing company, as was then, was called Zomba. And they were quite a big publishing company, and they had loads of recording studios, and they managed a lot of producers, including Martin Birch and Mutt Lange and people like that. So they managed all these producers. They were South Africans, and they just kind of like monopolized a little corner of the music industry. So there, a guy called Ralph Simon, who ran a chunk of Zomba, came up to her, and he was this funny little South African guy with a beard, and he goes, Bruce, what you should do? You should go and do one of these Nightmare on Elm Street films, and do that like high-pitched thing, that drives the Americans raving mad, because that's what Mutt does with Def Leppard, It's that high-pitched octave that drives the Americans raving mad, And I'm looking at him going, you're out of your fucking mind, Bless him. I said, but what's this film then? He goes, oh, it's the soundtrack for Nightmare on Elm Street 5. I went, oh, okay. He goes, and you could use one of our studios, and there's a small advance, but not much. And I went, I'll do it. But the reason I said I'll do it was because Yanick, who is my buddy in West London, Yanick Gers, was so dispirited with the music industry that he was going to give up, sell his equipment, and go and teach sociology at school or whatever. And I thought, well, that's a shame. So I said, yes, we'll do it. I phoned up Yanick and said, what are you doing next week? Oh, I don't know. They would bring your kit. You can't sell your gear because we're going to use it and we're going to make a record. So that's how we got around to doing it. But I had no idea what a Freddy Krueger film was. So I had to ask somebody. I said, look, I can't be bothered to watch the whole fucking thing. It can't be that complicated. Look, what goes on in a Freddy Krueger film? I said, the bizarre, we knocked up the song. Literally, I was round at a mate's house and he had an acoustic guitar and we were drinking a lot of coffee and he went off and went for a piss. And then when he came back, I'd like got some chords and I thought, what do you think of this? And they bring your daughter, bring it to the slaughter, let her go. He goes, well, it's quite catchy, that. I went, I might do something with that, I've got an idea, So we did, and I just said to Jan, I said, look, just bolt, can you bolt a bit of AC/DC on the front of it? And then we'll do that, and then we'll have a load of mad monks and tolling bells in the middle, and then a big outro chorus, including mad monks and tolling bells, and see what happens. So we did it, Steve heard it, and went, oh, I love that song. I want that song.
Give me that.
I want that song for Maiden. I was like, oh, shit. So then some guy from Columbia Records, which was then CBS Columbia, heard the song and went, I love that song. Wow, is there more material like that? And I said, yeah, loads, yeah. And he goes, wow, great. He said, well, if we do that, then we do an album. I went, good idea. So I went to Jan and said, Jan, we have 3 or 4 weeks to write an album. Let's go. And that was Tattooed Millionaire. So we wrote that album. We wrote the whole album in 2 weeks. Went into a studio provided by Zomba with Chris Sangarides producing. And we already had an American record deal. And I had a thing with EMI, with Maiden, where each member of the band had the ability to do a solo album. I thought, well, shit, I've got an American deal. I can bing, I've got a worldwide deal suddenly, and with one song, which is not going to be on the album. Because it's going to be the Iron Maiden song. And then we ended up putting it out as a Christmas #1. We went to #1 at Christmas with Bring Your Daughter to the Sucking Slaughter. It was amazing. We had, and we had like he's not exactly a TV evangelist, but close, Sir Cliff Richard, who is just like, oh, saint, ding, da-da-da-da-da, bit, And
I think when I think of Cliff, I know of Cliff Richard because of the Young Ones.
Because they used to take them. Yeah, because they used to take the piss out of him in the Young Ones, and before that he's like this clean cut, super squeaky clean, We're all going on a summer holiday, and he was one of these singers with no vibrato. Well, he had vibrato, ha, 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 like that, So it's like, what's this, And but he was, and he's a nice enough guy. Plays a lot of tennis. So he was our rival. Well, for whatever it was, I forget what a Christmas song, some like mistletoe type thing, and we knocked him off the top slot. And the great thing was that it's actually a legal requirement in the UK that the national radio station has to play the #1 track. So they had to play "Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter," but it had like the words. And now it's I mean, when "Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter," da 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 da, whoop, fade that, like that. So the world's fastest fade, which made people look completely ridiculous. And tickled us. It did. We thought it was very funny, most amusing. Would you like to hear that on this next tour?
Yeah.
No, not the next Iron Maiden tour. I might fucking play it, you know what I mean? What do you think?
#1 song. And I love how that story involves. It's a bit of an origin story for Yanick, of course.
Well, yeah, Jan. Then we did the album. The album had quite a lot of success, and then we took it on tour. So we toured with Yanick and everything. And Jan was like fully back in the musical world. And then Adrian left, and Steve asked Jan, and I was like, oh. Didn't ask me, but and Jan said, whatever, and it all worked out. So that was good.
Yeah, and you never know when you play guitar on a Bruce Dickinson solo album, you could be in Iron Maiden
or in jail.
Because then, of course, Adrian Smith came back with you for Accident of Birth,
and so then we've ended up with 3 guitar players. Because I mean, the irony of it is that Yanick, I think, was in the band for longer. By the time Adrian came back, Yanick had been in the band for longer than Adrian had been in the band in the first place. So now we've got 3, each 3 distinct styles. I mean, we call them the country club. How they divvy up, what they do. They all get together and sort of go, I'll do this bit, you do that bit, you do the other bit. So I just like we leave them to it.
I thought that was and continues to be the classiest move in metal ever, which was you coming back into the band, Adrian coming with you, but Yanick staying.
Yeah, because you don't want to leave. You can't leave people behind. It's not, you can't punish somebody for being, good and successful and stuff, and for the sake of what? For the sake of some public relations exercise to say, oh yeah, it's just the same as it was. No, it's not the same as it was. It may actually be better.
It's fucking cool. That's what it is. Triple guitar attack. One of our other questions here is, where did it go? Groove Juggernaut wants to know, what bands are you listening to right now?
Groove Juggernaut. You know what? I discovered this crazy French guy called Igor. Igorr. And it will either blow your mind or make you want to shoot yourself. Or a combination thereof. But he's absolutely extraordinary talent, and goes from classical, baroque, full-on opera into death metal and back again within 15 seconds, and continues and his output is prolific. So yeah, he's pretty darn cool. Other than that, I'm just listening to my wife's Spotify because she has very good taste. Actually, not Deezer. She's on Deezer, not Spotify or whatever. Yeah.
What kind of stuff is she into?
Actually, she's into kind of everything. So she be listening to sort of death metal stuff, and I'm like Cookie Monster vocals, and then the next minute she loves Scorpions, particularly old Scorpions, with Uli. So it's a huge Uli fan. But yeah, it's just really, really varied, So we were listening the other day to whatever was coming on in the car, and I'm thinking, I really love this song. And it was Chicago. It was a song by Chicago. And I was listening to the song going, my God, this is such a well put together song. Wow. I mean, I know it's a bit like AOR, middle of the road, but damn, that's a good song, And Toto and stuff like that. But yeah. And what did we listen to the other day that I'd completely forgotten about? Yes, And You and I. I was like, God damn, what a complex but amazing song. In fact, we played it while we were doing the demos. And I was saying to Mysteria, my keyboard player, I said, we're great on the new album to get some really gnarly, rich, analog, synth sounds on there. Like Yes, And You and I at the beginning. He goes, oh, what is that track? So we go, and so we just spent the next 20 minutes in the studio listening to And You and I going, oh, yeah. It's great, So yeah, all kinds of stuff.
And a lot of great singers in those groups you mentioned too.
John Anderson.
Cetera.
Yeah. Oh, no, he's a great voice, and John Anderson and everything, and but all different. I mean, that's the thing, is that I've completely gotten away from the what I call singer wars. There's absolutely sidestep all of that crap. Because one of the finest vocal performances I've ever seen on video, but also on record, is Johnny Cash doing "Hurt." Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, he owns that song now.
Even Trent Reznor has said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of spending more time listening to people. I mean, digging out old Leonard Cohen records and listening to the Fountainhead there, going, yeah. This is where it came from. This is where, and again, Jeff Buckley probably owns Hallelujah. But you still got to go back to the original and listen to how it is, And he was great. I mean, I love the fact that he's making, he was basically a poet that did music. But I love that because occasionally lyrics cross the line into poetry and vice versa,
And you're certainly a fan of some great poets.
Dead ones.
Just a couple more questions here. One is about, this is from Jabin. How do you both mentally and physically prepare for a tour? I think this is a cool question because, as you said, you're going to Europe tomorrow and you'll be touring a lot this year again.
Yeah. Well, touring is... being in a studio, I was talking to somebody about this last night, actually. I said, look, being in a studio is like you're a sprinter. You want that 100-meter performance. Boom, wham, and of course, you get to go, oh, voice is feeling a bit tired, I'll come back tomorrow and do that. So you sing for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, like, wah, and then go, stop, go away, come back, because you want it to be absolutely spot on, the best it can be, like bum, bum, bum. But a tour is more like a marathon. So you need endurance because you're doing an hour 45 and you're doing it 4 nights a week and you're doing the traveling and everything else. So there's 2 sides to that. One is the endurance of your voice. The other one is the endurance of your body because the one influences the other quite strongly. So having a reasonable level of fitness before you start is important, so I just try and kind of maintain that. I don't do anything special before a tour. I just try and keep a reasonable level of fitness. And then I do a few things. I might try a few things during rehearsals, sort of like where we're rehearsing at the moment in Croatia. It's an old theatre. And it has some steps going up the auditorium. So if I'm in between verses, you'll sometimes see me sprinting up the steps and go back down again to simulate what happens during a show, because you need the breath control after running around and doing all that kind of stuff. Other than that, in terms of the vocal thing, there's a sweet spot when your voice starts to open up. It is a muscle, or rather, it's surrounded by muscles that you need to use and control. And like all muscles, they will get tired. And the more you use them, the less tired they will get over a long period of time. They'll get used to lactic acid and all that good stuff that muscles do when they get tired. And you'll be able to, use your voice for longer. And of course that goes for your whole body, diaphragm, everything else like that, When I first start singing, if I haven't been singing for 2 or 3 months, then, the first 5 minutes sounds great. And then you suddenly, your belly starts to fatigue a little bit. So you start putting more load on your throat, and then everything closes up. And then it's like, okay, I should stop now and go and sit down and then have another go and then come back tomorrow and build it and build it and build it. So it is like, in my mind, I've got a program running of where I want to be before the first gig. Given, and I always try and think of rehearsals as eventually as overtraining. So I wouldn't normally sing 5 shows in a row, ever. But in rehearsals, I try and make that work. So that way, when I take a couple of days break and I do the first 2 shows, I'm confident that I'll be able to not just get through them, but get through them well, bearing in mind that you always sing 30% harder than you ever sang in rehearsals at a live show. Like everybody does on stage. Everybody plays. They hit drums harder. They play the bass harder. Everybody hits stuff harder when you're in front of that audience, you know. So you just need to bear that in mind. So I try and, that's the way I try and graduate it, you know.
And you mentioned how many shows you will or won't do in a row and why. And jumping back to when we were talking about when you were actually flying the band around.
Yeah.
How did you then have to work that in scheduling-wise? Because certainly...
Oh, we didn't. No, it was the other way around. So we had the schedule for the band. I was only allowed to fly according to the rules of rest and stuff like that. So what we ended up doing there was the rule is if you're an airline pilot, put very simply, if you go and fly for half an hour, you then have to have 12 hours rest. It doesn't matter if you fly for 6 hours or 10 hours or half an hour. Boom, your duty is finished. You have to have 12 hours rest, right? So that, obviously, if I was on stage at 11 o'clock at night, according to the aviation authority, they said, well, we're going to count you doing a show as the same as you doing a flight. So you can't do anything until 11 o'clock the following morning. Now, we were often leaving at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The report time for the crew would be 11 o'clock in the morning or 10:30. So that counted me out. However, having done a show, you have a travel day, and it's a night flight, 7.5 hours. Bingo, I'm in. So we do that. So that wasn't particularly a problem. I mean, what was more of a problem was what we did in the early days of the band when I first joined. And the regime was something like 9 shows on, 1 day off, 8 shows, 1 day off, 7 days, 1 day off, 5. And I was just voices are just not designed for that kind of thing with traveling every day and everything else. And because your day off is not a day off, it's a travel day. So I did try and explain this to the manager. I said, your last singer, you know how he kind of exploded?
Yeah.
That's why. Maybe he didn't explain it to you, but I'm explaining it to you now, you know. So then on the subsequent tours on Peace of Mind and Power Slave, we went to a regime. He said, oh, well, I'll give you an easy time. 5 on, 1 off, 4 on, 1 off, 5 on, 1 off. So now we're genuinely, properly, like, old, right? So we basically do 4 shows a week. So, and we have a rule where we'll do 2 shows back to back, but then you have 2-day break. Or you could do 1 show, travel day, 1 show, travel day, 1 show, and you can keep going ad infinitum. I actually prefer doing 2 back to back because the 2 back to back, the 2 days you get is a real recovery time, and then you're back to 0. If you do 1 and then travel, and then 1 and then travel, it's like sitting on the end of a log with a hacksaw going, shh. At some point, this is going to break, So you do need a bit of time to let it recover. And also the fact that the demands we put upon ourselves now in terms of the level of performance that we're doing is actually far more than it was in the 80s. So I listened to performances that we did in 84, 85, 86, 87. I'm like, wow, we are so much better now. We really are. Yeah. We really are. And there's a reason for that. Equipment, technology, everything's gotten better. but also this concept of trying to make sure that everybody's at peak performance, not just hanging on by the fingernails, you know.
Well, speaking of peak performance, I think I can speak for all of us. We're so excited for this next solo jaunt, and of course for the Maiden jaunt that's coming up before that.
Yeah, Wilton Theatre on the 5th of October, yeah. And all points in between, you know.
Well, on behalf of Musicians Institute and Z2 Comics and Loudwire and myself and everyone here, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Bruce Dickinson, everybody.
I hope you enjoyed it. It was good fun.
Let's get a round of applause, and let's let Bruce get out of here before we all get up.